The Silent Guardians, Part 1. The central council spire of Nexus Prime glittered like a silver needle against the purple twilight, its 1,000-level edifice housing the heart of the Galactic Alliance's governance. High Counselor Xin Terra stood at the panoramic viewport of the council chamber, her 4 slender arms clasped behind her back, iridescent scales reflecting the light of 3 moons. 62 species comprised the Alliance, a testament to cooperation and shared progress across 20,000 years. But tonight, Xin Terra felt only dread as she watched the incoming diplomatic vessels. "They've confirmed arrival within the hour," High Counselor, her aide, Veldun, announced. "And the Void Swarm's progression. The outer colony of Helios 9 went silent 6 hours ago. That makes 17 worlds in 60 days." Xin Terra's inner eyelids fluttered in distress. The Void Swarm had appeared from the galactic rim 3 months ago, a ravenous collective of biomechanical entities that consumed everything in their path. Not merely destroying, but converting matter and energy into more of themselves. The Alliance's finest weapons and shields had proven ineffective. "The Varangian delegation is most insistent about accessing the Forbidden Archives," Veldun added. "The archives are sealed by ancient treaty," Xin Terra replied, though her resolve was wavering. "No species may access information regarding the quarantine zone or its inhabitants." "With respect, High Counselor, the Varangians believe there might be answers there, about the humans." Xin Terra tensed at the mention of that name. Humans, even after 8 centuries. The word carried weight. "The archives remain sealed," she declared, turning away from the viewport. But deep within her primary heart, doubt bloomed like a black flower. 3 days later, Xin Terra found herself breaking an 800-year-old covenant. The Forbidden Archives lay in the deepest subterranean levels of Nexus Prime. As her security clearance opened the final door, air hissed through compression seals unused for centuries. Inside, holographic data cores hummed to life, sensing presence after a near millennium of solitude. "This is treason," Veldun whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "No," Xin Terra replied. "This is desperation." The Void Swarm had devoured 3 more worlds since their conversation at the viewport. Alliance fleets were being converted faster than they could be built. Evacuations were failing. Time was running out. The archives contained the complete record of humanity's time among the stars, and the reason for their quarantine. Xin Terra accessed the primary control node and began research. Historical records flowed before her eyes. Humanity's explosive expansion from their homeworld, their alarming technological progression, their conflicts, both internal and with other species, and finally, the war of ascension that had led to their isolation. "I don't understand," Veldun said, reviewing another data stream. "If humans were so dangerous, why weren't they simply eliminated?" "Because they couldn't be," Xin Terra replied softly. "The Alliance fought them to a standstill, but the cost was catastrophic. The quarantine was the compromise, a vast energy barrier around their home system, containing them forever. But this doesn't help us against the Void Swarm." Xin Terra's search deepened, probing classified military records. "Perhaps it does. There are references here to a human defense protocol called Thermopyle that was particularly effective against hive mind entities." Her fingers danced across the interface, retrieving more data. Before the quarantine, humanity fought something they called the phage, a collective consciousness that operated not unlike the Void Swarm. And they won. They annihilated it completely. Xin Terra's voice held both admiration and fear. But the methods they used were deemed too extreme by Alliance standards. "High Counselor," Veldun's voice dropped to a whisper, "are you suggesting we release them?" Xin Terra stared at the final file, the exact specifications of the quarantine barrier and its sole deactivation protocol. "I'm suggesting we may have no choice." The journey to the quarantine zone required 11 days at maximum FTL velocity. Xin Terra spent every moment second-guessing her decision. The Alliance Council had been bitterly divided. 29 species voted in favor of her proposal, 28 against, with 5 abstentions, a margin so slim it could hardly be called a mandate. Her diplomatic vessel, the Stellar Accord, dropped out of FTL at the very edge of the interdiction field that had contained humanity for 8 centuries. The barrier was invisible to the naked eye, but showed as a shimmering curtain of energy on their sensors, enclosing an entire star system. "We're being scanned," the navigation officer reported, surprise evident in his voice. "The barrier itself appears to be analyzing our vessel." "Open a communication channel," Zin-Terra ordered. Her ceremonial robes felt suddenly heavy on her shoulders. The view screen remained blank, but a voice emanated from the ship's speakers, synthesized but unmistakably carrying the cadence patterns of human speech. "Alliance vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify and state your purpose." Zin-Terra stepped forward. "I am High Counselor Zin-Terra of the Galactic Alliance. We come seeking aid against an existential threat to all sentient life in this galaxy." A pause stretched for several seconds. "Transmit threat assessment data for evaluation." Zin-Terra nodded to her communications officer, who sent the comprehensive file on the Void Swarm. Another, longer silence followed. "Prepare for barrier deactivation in localized sector. A diplomatic delegation will meet your vessel. Any weapons discharge or unauthorized approach to Terra will result in immediate defensive response." The barrier before them rippled and parted like liquid mercury, creating an opening just large enough for the Stellar Accord to pass through. "They're allowing us entry," Veldun said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They're allowing us a conversation," Zin-Terra corrected. "Nothing more has been decided." As they passed through the barrier, the sensors revealed what 800 years of isolation had wrought. The entire system was transformed. The fourth planet, Earth, or Terra as they called it, was encased in what appeared to be a partial Dyson sphere. The space between planets teemed with structures of impossible scale. Massive shipyards, energy collectors the size of small moons, defensive platforms that dwarfed Alliance battle stations. By the first light, Veldun whispered, "They've been building all this time." A vessel approached from the direction of Terra, sleek, angular, and utterly black against the starfield, absorbing rather than reflecting light. It matched their velocity perfectly, then extended a docking collar. "They're requesting that you and 2 advisors transfer to their ship," the communications officer reported. Zin-Terra felt her secondary heart flutter with apprehension. Very well. The human vessel's interior was austere but not unwelcoming. The lighting adjusted automatically to accommodate Zin-Terra's sensitive eyes, and the atmospheric composition shifted subtly to match the Stellar Accord's environment. They were met by 3 humans in what appeared to be formal attire, simple, dark garments with minimal ornamentation. 2 male, 1 female, if Zin-Terra remembered the ancient briefings correctly. "High Counselor," the female human stepped forward. She stood shorter than Zin-Terra, but moved with a fluid confidence. "I am Director Ilara Kane of Terran External Affairs. This is General Marcus Way and Dr. Soren Nakamura." "Thank you for receiving us," Zin-Terra replied, performing the traditional greeting gesture of her species. "This is Veldun, my senior advisor, and Fleet Commander Jurix." Director Kane didn't smile, but her expression softened slightly. "In 800 years, you're the first Alliance representatives to approach our barrier with something other than threats or demands. Please, follow me." They were led to a conference room with a view screen displaying the magnificence of Terra's orbital structures. Director Kane gestured for them to be seated. "Your data regarding the Void Swarm is concerning," she said without preamble. "The pattern matches certain historical threats we've encountered." "Then you believe you can help us?" Zin-Terra couldn't keep the hope from her voice. "That depends." General Way spoke for the first time, his voice deep and measured. "On why we should." The atmosphere in the room chilled perceptibly. "I understand your reluctance," Zin-Terra acknowledged. "The quarantine was imposed against your will. But billions of innocent lives are at stake. Billions of innocent lives were at stake when your alliance condemned us to isolation, Dr. Nakamura observed quietly. When you determined our methods too extreme, our technology too dangerous, our very nature too volatile to exist among you. The decision was made before my time, Zintera said. Before the time of any currently living Alliance species. We've changed. Perhaps you have too. We have, Director Kane confirmed, but not in the ways you might hope. Isolation taught us self-reliance. It taught us to abandon certain moral constraints when survival demands it. It made us exactly what your ancestors feared we would become. And yet you haven't attempted to break the barrier, Veldun observed. General Wei smiled thinly. We could have breached your quarantine 300 years ago, advisor. We chose not to. The revelation hung in the air like a blade. Why? Zintera asked finally. Because you were right about one thing, Director Kane replied. Humanity is dangerous. We recognized that ourselves. We needed time to develop safeguards. But now you come to us. Dr. Nakamura leaned forward, eyes intense, begging for the very qualities you once condemned. Our ingenuity, our ferocity, our willingness to do what others will not. Zintera felt the weight of 8 centuries pressing down upon her. Yes, she admitted, we need what humanity can do. The Alliance faces extinction. The 3 humans exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Show us everything you know about these void swarm entities, General Wei said finally. Their tactics, their biology, their communication patterns. For the next 6 hours, they reviewed the Alliance's complete intelligence on the threat. The humans asked precise, technical questions that Zintera often struggled to answer. They focused particularly on the swarm's ability to convert matter and the speed at which they adapted to Alliance weapons. Finally, Director Kane sat back. This is a Class 5 interstellar predator species. We've theorized about them, but never encountered one. Can you help us? Zintera asked directly. Yes, General Wei answered. But our methods will disturb your alliance. They will violate your ethical frameworks. Are you prepared for that? Before Zintera could respond, the conference room door slid open. The human aide entered, face grave, and whispered something to Director Kane. It seems our timeline has accelerated, Kane announced. The Void Swarm has changed course. They're heading directly for the quarantine barrier. That's impossible, Fleet Commander Jerix protested. They couldn't know we're here. Unless they'd been seeking humans all along, Dr. Nakamura suggested quietly. Interesting. General Wei stood. Director, I recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Thermopylae. Kane nodded sharply. Agreed. High Counselor, you should return to your vessel. We'll provide an escort back through the barrier. You're sending us away. Zintera rose in alarm. After all this? No, Director Kane's face was grim but determined. We're coming with you. The Terran Defense Fleet will deploy within the hour. Humanity is returning to the stars. High Counselor, let's hope your alliance is ready for us. As if to punctuate her words, alarms began to sound throughout the human vessel. Through the view screen, Zintera watched as massive structures throughout the system began to move, reconfiguring themselves with fluid precision. The age of humanity's isolation was over. For better or worse, the galaxy's most feared children were awakening from their long exile, just as the darkness closed in. Forged in Fire, Part 2. The Terran Defense Fleet emerged from the quarantine barrier like a storm front. 117 vessels of varying configurations, each larger and more intimidating than any Alliance capital ship. Zintera watched from the command deck of the Alliance flagship, Celestial Vigilance, as the human armada took position in perfect formation. They've maintained combat readiness for 8 centuries, Fleet Commander Jerix observed, unable to mask his professional admiration. Their ship designs are intimidating. Intimidating was an understatement. The Terran vessels resembled predatory creatures more than constructed craft, angular, asymmetrical, with weapon systems unlike anything in Alliance tactical databases. But it was their flagship that commanded attention, a behemoth designated Prometheus, nearly twice the size of the Celestial Vigilance. High Counselor, the human command staff is requesting permission to come aboard, a communications officer announced. Minutes later, Director Kane, General Wei, and Dr. Nakamura stepped onto the Alliance flagship's bridge. Their expressions remained neutral, but Zenterra detected subtle signs of assessment as they scanned the Alliance technology around them. The Void Swarm has accelerated, General Wei announced without preamble. Our long-range sensors detect them altering course to intercept us. Estimated time to engagement, 14 hours. Unease rippled through the bridge crew. Alliance sensors wouldn't detect the swarm for another 5 hours at least. How can your sensors reach so far? Jerix asked. Quantum entanglement relays, Dr. Nakamura explained. We've maintained a network of stealth observation platforms throughout the galaxy since before the quarantine. Zenterra felt a chill. You've been watching us. All this time. We would have been fools not to. Director Kane replied unapologetically. The quarantine was always a temporary measure in our view. We needed to understand how galactic politics evolved in our absence. Before Zenterra could respond, General Wei stepped forward and activated a holographic display. With your permission, we should discuss strategy. The tactical projection showed the approaching Void Swarm, a seething mass of interconnected entities stretching across thousands of kilometers of space. Our preliminary analysis confirms what we suspected, Wei continued. This is a Type 3 distributed hive intelligence, adaptation-capable, self-replicating, with a central consciousness that coordinates through quantum signaling, similar to the phage we encountered before the quarantine. Your records of that conflict were purged from Alliance archives, Zenterra noted. By your ancestors, not by us. Director Kane's smile was thin. The phage was defeated through targeted disruption of its quantum communication network, followed by systematic eradication of isolated clusters. The same approach should work here. Fleet Commander Jerix leaned forward. We've attempted communication disruption. The swarm adapts within minutes. Because you're using conventional jamming, Dr. Nakamura said. We'll be deploying quantum entanglement inverters, devices that create localized pockets of altered spacetime, where the swarm's communication protocols will fail. That technology violates the Boyer-Cameron Treaty on Spacetime Manipulation, one of the Alliance science officers interjected. A treaty signed after our quarantine, General Wei observed coolly. We are not bound by its restrictions. The tension on the bridge thickened. Zenterra raised a hand for calm. We requested human aid knowing their methods might challenge our conventions, she reminded everyone. Let us focus on survival first. We can debate legal frameworks afterward. Director Kane nodded appreciatively. A pragmatic approach, High Counselor. General Wei will coordinate with your fleet commanders to position Alliance ships optimally around our quantum inverter vessels. Dr. Nakamura requires access to your sensor networks to calibrate our targeting systems. And what will these weapons of yours do exactly? Jerix asked. Dr. Nakamura's expression remained neutral. The first phase uses quantum disruption to isolate swarm clusters from their collective intelligence. The second phase employs targeted antimatter cascades to eliminate those isolated segments. A horrified silence fell across the bridge. Antimatter cascades were banned throughout known space after the Cygnus calamity, Zenterra said quietly. Indeed, Director Kane acknowledged. Because they're extraordinarily dangerous when misused, but they are also extraordinarily effective against distributed biological threats. This is the choice before you, High Counselor. Accept our methods, or face extinction. The words hung in the air between them, a perfect distillation of why humanity had been quarantined in the first place. Zenterra felt the weight of her civilization's future pressing down upon her shoulders. Proceed with your preparations, she said finally. We will comply. The next 10 hours witnessed a flurry of activity as human technical teams integrated their systems with Alliance networks. Zin-Terre observed with increasing disquiet how smoothly the humans operated in crisis. Their efficiency bordered on the mechanical, their focus unwavering. In her private conference room, she voiced her concerns to Director Kane. "Your people seem almost eager for this conflict." Kane considered the observation. "Not eager. Prepared. There's a difference. You prepared for war for 800 years. We prepared for survival," Kane corrected. "The galaxy quarantined us because we refused to accept extinction as a possibility, because we were willing to cross lines that the Alliance considered inviolable." She stood and walked to the viewport, watching as human and Alliance ships maneuvered into formation. "The irony isn't lost on me," Kane continued. "The very qualities that led to our isolation are now the ones you desperately need. But understand this, High Counselor, we aren't vengeful. Humanity could have broken the quarantine centuries ago and exacted retribution. We chose restraint. Then why remain isolated if you could leave?" Kane's expression softened slightly. "Because your ancestors were partially right about us. Humanity is dangerous. We needed time to develop control mechanisms, biological, technological, and cultural safeguards to harness our more destructive tendencies." Before Zin-Terre could inquire further, the alert klaxon sounded. General Wei's voice came through the communication system. "Initial void swarm elements have entered sensor range. All vessels assume combat positions." The battle began with silent precision. Terran vessels moved forward in a complex, three-dimensional formation that seemed chaotic to Alliance tactical observers, but proved devastatingly effective. The quantum inverter ships, sleek, obsidian constructs, penetrated deep into the swarm's advance guard. From the command deck, Zin-Terre watched in awe as the human strategy unfolded. Where Alliance fleets had fought conventionally, firing upon swarm entities directly, the humans attacked the space between them. The quantum inverters created distortion fields that separated swarm clusters from each other, disrupting their hive intelligence. "The inverters are functioning at 92% efficiency," Dr. Nakamura reported, monitoring displays that streamed data at rates faster than most Alliance officers could process. Phase 1 complete in designated sectors. Moving to Phase 2. A new class of human vessels moved forward, angular craft with massive energy signatures. They positioned themselves precisely within the disruption zones. Antimatter cascade deployment in 3, 2, 1. "Mark," General Wei announced. The viewport automatically darkened as blinding flashes erupted across the battlefield. Where portions of the void swarm had been, only dispersing particles remained. No remnants large enough to regenerate or recombine. "First wave neutralized," Wei confirmed, recalibrating for second wave approach. The Alliance bridge crew stared in stunned silence. The void swarm had devoured 17 worlds and destroyed countless Alliance ships. Yet humans had just eliminated a third of their total mass in a single coordinated strike. "The remaining swarm elements are adapting," Dr. Nakamura warned. "Quantum signatures shifting. They're attempting to compensate for our disruption fields." "As expected," General Wei replied calmly, implementing countermeasure protocol Hydra. The human vessels began a new deployment pattern, even more complex than before. Additional systems came online, emitting energy signatures that confounded even Alliance sensors. "They're learning from us," Director Kane explained to Zin-Terre. "And we're learning from them. It's a race of adaptation." "Who will win?" Zin-Terre asked quietly. "We will," Kane replied with absolute certainty, "because we've been preparing for this specific threat scenario for centuries. The phage taught us much about combating hive mind entities." The battle continued for hours, a complex dance of attack and counterattack. The humans' tactical flexibility proved remarkable. Whenever the swarm adapted to one approach, the Terran fleet seamlessly transitioned to alternative strategies. But the cost was mounting. 3 human vessels had been consumed by the swarm, their crews lost. 5 Alliance ships had suffered the same fate despite following human tactical guidance. The swarm's central intelligence node has been identified, Dr. Nakamura announced suddenly. It's shielding itself behind multiple defensive layers. General Wei studied the tactical display. Face impassive. Conventional approaches will fail. The node will continue generating adaptive countermeasures faster than we can deploy them. What do you propose? Fleet Commander Jurix asked. Protocol Thermopylae. Wei replied gravely. As originally intended. Director Kane's expression tightened. That's a suicide mission, General. For some, yes. Wei's voice remained steady. The math is clear, Director. It's the only approach with acceptable probability of success. Zintera looked between them. What is Protocol Thermopylae? After a moment of silent communication between the humans, Dr. Nakamura explained. A targeted strike at the heart of a hive consciousness, delivered from within its own defensive perimeter. It requires volunteers. Understanding dawned slowly. You're suggesting sending people into the swarm deliberately. One ship, General Wei clarified, with a specialized payload and crew. They would allow themselves to be partially consumed by the swarm, penetrate to the central node, and deliver a synchronized quantum disruption pulse directly to the core intelligence. That's barbaric, Jurix protested. That's necessary, Wei countered without heat. I've already selected the vessel and requested volunteers. You'll find no shortage, Director Kane observed quietly. Our people understand sacrifice. Zintera felt her primary heart constrict. I cannot condone sending any beings to certain death. Yet you condone the certain death of billions if we fail. Wei asked. This is why we were quarantined, High Counselor. Not because humanity is cruel, but because we accept necessary costs that others cannot. The tactical display updated, showing the swarm regrouping, adapting, evolving new defenses. Time was running out. I will join the Thermopylae team, Zintera said suddenly. The declaration stunned everyone into silence. High Counselor, that is unacceptable. Jurix protested immediately. It is necessary, Zintera countered, borrowing the human general's phrasing. The Alliance asked humanity for aid. I will not ask humans to make sacrifices I am unwilling to make myself. Director Kane studied her with new interest. The mission requires specific neural implants and biological modifications that you don't possess. Then give them to me, Zintera challenged. If your technology is as advanced as you claim. A moment of silence passed before Dr. Nakamura spoke. It could be done. A temporary neural interface would suffice. Her species' neurological structure is compatible. General Wei nodded slowly. Your presence would actually increase our chances of success, High Counselor. The swarm has encountered your species before, but never humans. Your familiar neural pattern could help mask our approach. Then it's decided, Zintera said, with more confidence than she felt. 6 hours later, Zintera found herself aboard the Valiant Sacrifice, a specialized human vessel unlike any she had ever seen. Its interior resembled a living organism more than a constructed ship, neural interfaces connecting crew members directly to the vessel's systems. The team consisted of 7 humans and herself, all connected to each other and the ship through a shared neural network. It was simultaneously intimate and terrifying. She could sense the humans' disciplined emotions, their focused determination. They accepted their probable death with a calm resolve that humbled her. Captain Elena Reyes, the mission commander, briefed them one final time. Once we penetrate the outer defensive layers, the swarm will begin consuming our vessel. Our shielding will protect the core systems and crew long enough to reach the central node, but not long enough for extraction afterward. She looked at each crew member in turn. This is your final opportunity to withdraw. No one moved. No one spoke. Their shared determination flowed through the neural link, like a steady current. Very well, Reyes concluded. Initiate launch sequence. The Valiant Sacrifice detached from the Alliance flagship and accelerated toward the heart of the Void Swarm. Through the neural link, Zintera experienced the human's perceptions, Their heightened senses, their precise awareness of tactical data, their absolute focus on the mission. As they penetrated the outer swarm formations, Xinterra felt the first touch of the enemy's consciousness, cold, alien, hungry. The sensation nearly overwhelmed her, but the neural link steadied her, the human's mental discipline providing a framework for her own. Outer defensive layer breached, Captain Rice reported. Hull consumption beginning. Through the ship's sensors, Xinterra could see the void swarm's tendrils penetrating the outer hull, converting the vessel's matter into their own substance. The sensation was horrifying, like being devoured alive. Yet the human crew remained focused. Central node approaching, the navigation officer announced. Quantum payload primed. Captain Rice turned to Xinterra. High Counselor, we need your neural pattern now. Focus on your memories of the swarm attacking Alliance worlds. Xinterra complied, bringing forth the terrible images of devastated planets, of billions consumed. The neural network amplified these memories, projecting them outward like a beacon. It's working, Dr. Harriet Chen, the team's scientist, reported. The node is responding to the High Counselor's pattern, interpreting us as previously consumed Alliance matter. They penetrated deeper, the ship gradually dissolving around them. Only the core compartment remained intact, protected by fields that the humans had never shared with the Alliance. We've reached optimal position, Captain Rice announced, preparing final approach. Through the neural link, Xinterra felt the humans' collective consciousness focus like a laser. Their thoughts aligned with mechanical precision, directing the ship's remaining systems toward one purpose. Neural dissolution beginning, Dr. Chen warned. We have 90 seconds until cognitive coherence fails. The void swarm's intelligence was now actively probing their minds, recognizing the deception. Pain lanced through the neural network as the swarm attempted to dissolve their consciousness as it had dissolved the ship's hull. Initiating quantum cascade, Captain Rice ordered, her voice steady despite the agony evident in the neural link. All minds focus on the targeting solution. Xinterra joined her consciousness with the humans, focusing every thought on the mathematical perfection of the weapon's deployment pattern. Through their shared perception, she could see the central node of the swarm, a pulsating mass of computational matter, processing, adapting, consuming. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into light and silence. Consciousness returned slowly, fragmentary. Xinterra became aware of voices, movement, the subtle vibration of a ship's deck beneath her. She's regaining consciousness, someone said. A human voice. Dr. Nakamura. Consciousness returned slowly, fragmentary. Xinterra became aware of voices, movement, the subtle vibration of a ship's deck beneath her. She's regaining consciousness, someone said. A human voice. Dr. Nakamura. Xinterra opened her eyes to find herself in a medical bay aboard what appeared to be a human vessel. Director Kane and Dr. Nakamura stood nearby, watching her with expressions that might have been concern. The mission? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Successful, Director Kane replied. The void swarm has been eliminated completely. The quantum cascade disrupted its central intelligence beyond recovery capability. Xinterra struggled to process this. The others? Captain Rice. The crew. Dr. Nakamura's expression softened. You are the only survivor, High Counselor. A human rescue team extracted you moments before the valiant sacrifice was completely consumed. Captain Rice and her crew ensured your escape pod launched successfully. The knowledge settled like a stone in Xinterra's hearts. 7 humans had sacrificed themselves not just for their own kind, but for a galaxy that had rejected them. Why save me? She asked finally. Because Captain Rice recognized something in you through the neural link. Director Kane explained. Something she believed was worth preserving. The Alliance will need guidance in the days ahead, Dr. Nakamura added. As humanity returns to galactic society, there will be adjustments. Captain Rice believed you could help bridge the divide. Xinterra closed her eyes, remembering the brief but profound connection she had shared with the human crew. Their discipline, their courage, their acceptance of necessary sacrifice, but also their hope, their genuine desire for reconciliation with the wider galaxy. "The quarantine is truly over then?" she asked. "Yes," Director Kane confirmed. "For better or worse, humanity has returned to the stars. The question now is whether the galaxy is ready for us, and whether we are ready for it." 3 days later, Zin-Terra stood before the full Galactic Alliance Council, still bearing the subtle neural implants that had allowed her to join minds with the humans. The council chamber was filled beyond capacity, representatives from all 62 member species present to hear her report. "The Void Swarm has been eliminated," she announced, "thanks to the intervention of humanity." A mixture of relief and unease rippled through the chamber. "And now these humans demand what in return?" Councillor Vrax of the Taladarian hegemony asked. "Reparations, territory, vengeance for 8 centuries of isolation." Zin-Terra regarded him steadily. "They demand nothing. They offer partnership." She activated the central holographic display, showing the Terran fleet now in orbit around Nexus Prime. Formidable, but maintaining a respectful distance,